Hello, and welcome to Go Be Radiant. Susie here, and I am so glad that you decided to join me today. Well, is it time for a New Year's resolution or what? I'm going to say, or what? Because New Year's resolutions, we always have the best of intentions, right? We always have the highest of hopes, and we really think that this year we're going to do such and such. We're going to exercise 7 times a week, or we're going to lose weight, or we are going to go to that place we've never been before. And even with the best of intentions, somehow, after a short period of time, our resolve seems to fizzle out. And before you know it, we are no longer thinking about what we had resolved to do. And we might even feel like a failure, and we don't want to do that. We don't want to feel that way. So I have another idea for us. But before I tell you what it is, let me give you a little context. I was thinking a lot about this idea, about having a chance to start a new year. And I love the idea of a clean slate. Whenever I was in school, I always loved the start of a new semester because it was a chance to start anew, to start fresh. And there was nothing lingering. There were no lingering homework assignments. There were no papers I had to turn in. It was all a fresh start. And so I think there is something to be said for the beginning of a new year and a chance to start something new or to do something different. And I was thinking about the life of Christ. And if you read through the Gospels, you will notice how often Jesus talks about the intentional life he lives. You'll see phrases like, I have not come to da 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 da, or I have come so that, or I have come to. He had a very purposeful life. So, for example, in Mark 1:38, he says, Jesus replied, "Let us go somewhere else, to the nearby villages, so I can preach there also. That is why I have come." You see, Jesus was very clear about what his purpose was on this earth, and he had to use every hour, every minute of his time to do what the Father wanted him to do. In fact, in John 4:34, he says, "My food is to do the will of him who sent me and finish his work." It was so important to Jesus to do what God had wanted him to do. It was so important to stay focused on the task at hand. In John 10:10, Jesus says, "I have come that they may have life and have it to the full." This was a man, 100% God, who knew what his life's purpose was, who knew what he was to be about while he was on earth. And I got to thinking about that. And there have been times and seasons in my life when I have felt very much aligned with what God wanted me to do. And there are other times when I feel like I've maybe drifted a little this way or that way, and I've kind of done what I wanted to do, or I've gotten distracted by other things, or I've simply been influenced, not necessarily negatively, but just influenced differently by the people around me. So let me give you an example. I used to be a planner. I would draw out a calendar. I would color code things. I knew what I was doing when, where, and with whom. And I enjoyed that because it gave me something to look forward to. I felt purposeful. And then I married someone who is spontaneous, shall we say, someone whom I love very much, but he is not a planner by nature. And so slowly I kind of became a little more flexible, and a little less of my planning nature kind of came out. Well, then I had 2 kids, right? And that, that just changed everything, because children are unpredictable. At least my children are. Maybe if you have children, they are very predictable and on a schedule, and they wake up every day at the same time, and they go to bed every day at the same time, and they're hungry every day at the same time. But my children are not like that. And so I used to be, kind of on one side, and now the pendulum has swung to the other side. And I tell you, it has affected me. I have felt less purposeful. I have felt less intentional in terms of what I'm doing with my time. I feel like that other people and other things are dictating, other events are dictating what goes on my calendar, instead of me sitting down like Jesus did with the Father and saying, God, what would you have me be about this year? As I look at 2019, what do you want on my calendar? How do you want me to spend my time? How can I be intentional like Jesus was? And as I thought about that, I got really excited. One, because I think that's my planning nature, but two, because it does something really important for my relationship with God. So instead of a resolution, I'm going to do a realignment where I align my activities and my calendar and my schedule and where I put my heart and soul. I'm going to realign that with what God wants for my life this year. And so I'm not going to resolve to exercise 12 times a week, because let's face it, that's not going to happen. But if I can realign with the priorities of Christ, I'm going to be in a much better place. And if I can keep checking back, I can keep that realignment going, I really believe that I will feel more intentional and purposeful and more in tune with what God wants me to be about. And I really believe that will strengthen my relationship with God. And I won't feel so kind of scattered. I will feel like I really am doing what God wants me to be about. And I feel like that's going to be a huge change, for me anyway, in 2019. So my question for you is, do you need, not a New Year's resolution, but do you need a realignment with God this year, this coming year in 2019? If you do, would you join me and just take a few minutes and sit down with God and say, God, what would you have me do this year? And have a pencil or a pen ready and some paper, or maybe a journal, and just write down what comes to mind. And if you're not feeling like you're getting a whole lot, look at the life of Christ. Read through the Gospels. What was he about? Did he spend time with people? Did he share truth with people? Yes. So how can we add that into our schedules and then put other things in our calendar around that? So the priority is always Jesus and what he wants us to be about. And then the other things like birthday parties and events and church functions come around that. But first and foremost, we are aligned with what God wants us to be doing. That's my challenge for me. That's my challenge for us as we look at 2019. I want to wish you a very happy new year. Thank you so much for making my 2018 an incredible year. I have learned so much, and I so appreciate you and the fact that you're following my blog. And if you aren't, you still have a chance to follow. So go ahead and do that. And if this message has impacted you or inspired you or challenged you in some way, would you consider sharing it with your friends? I would love to see my following increase this year, and I really believe God can do that with your help. So happy New Year to you and your family, and I will see you in 2019. In the meantime, let's go be radiant this week.